then it just keeps careening out of control, more and more violent. And from a selfish perspective, I'm right there now. Now I'm watching this major development in an organized crime family, this mob war, and I'm able to develop a beat. I benefited from that in terms of career-wise, but it was from the Philadelphia mob perspective, it was the beginning of the end. They've never been as stable and never been as powerful as they were during the Bruno era.
Right. For that, I got to get your autograph. Blood and I was like one of my first books I read as a teenager.
Oh, thank you.
So
yeah, that was the first one I did, and it was I think it captured the essence of what was going on then. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Especially looking at it from a journalistic point of view, and then when Prince Mafia comes, since they're seeing a member from the culture, so they can indulge a little bit more differently.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of Testa, who's Bruno's successor, to those who don't know, when it came to like Philip Chicken Man Testa, he only been reigned for like about a year, and he's named the Bruce Springsteen song. But I was just curious, have you ever interacted with him or Salvie Testa, his son?
No, never had any direct contact with them. I mean, I wrote about the Testa murder, and then I wrote a lot about the whole machinations with Salvie Testa. But as I said, these guys were not anxious to be interviewed. They
Of course.
care about the press,
especially in those days.
Yeah, I mean, and it changed with the next generation, with the Joey Molino generation. And I think about, why was that? Why do you think that was? Well, Testa, Scarfo, Bruno, they came from a different era, and the press was, they were an annoyance, something to be tolerated. They're always going to be there, but just ignore them. And that was the attitude. The next generation of guys, the Joey Molino generation, those guys, I believe this, most of those guys, it wasn't really about Cosa Nostra. It wasn't really about the mafia. They came from the same neighborhood. They hung in the same street corner. And their loyalty was to one another from the neighborhood. It was a neighborhood thing, not a mafia thing. They were street corner guys. And if you look at the Molino organization as it was, most of those guys grew up together, and none of them, maybe one, most have not cooperated. The other thing is, if they have that street corner mentality, you don't want anybody else to get the last word.
True.
So a couple guys started to realize, if I talk to the press and I put my spin on events, I'm going to be able to get over on these other guys that are saying stuff about me. And when I first started writing about this, I got complaints from, he only writes what the cops tell him. He only writes what the prosecutors say. And I said to somebody, you know what? I'm only as good as the people I'm talking to. Only as good as the information I got. Now, if they want to, if they got something to say, tell them. So one guy calls me and he starts out ranting and raving about what I'm just saying to you. I only write what the cops tell me. I don't know half of what, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And I say, well, it's ironic you're calling me right now. I'm working on this story. And I forget what it was, but I said, cops are telling me ABC. And he said, it's XYZ. So I check it out, and he might be right. I write a story in the paper, according to law enforcement sources, ABC, but however, according to one underworld source, it might be XYZ. And they saw that in the paper, and it was like a light went off. And they realized they could, like a politician, you could have your spin. You could get your word out to the public. Now, Bruno and those guys, they didn't care about getting their word out to the public. They didn't care. But these younger guys, it was that street corner thing. Who's getting over on who? Who's going to have the last word? And they saw the media as a way to play that game. And so we in the media benefited from that, but we also, I think, in retrospect, we probably somewhat enhanced their reputation, their status, their glamour by writing about them. But it was a two-way street.
It's an interesting paradigm.
They saw a need to talk about what was going on, whereas Bruno saw no need to do it. What does he care what I'm writing? He wouldn't care what I was writing. I'm not going to have any impact on him. But these younger guys, they wanted their word out there. They wanted to be, you say this, well, here's the truth, boom, to you. It's like that kind of stuff,
Yes, speaking of that,
different.
And this is why I get confused, especially even though he was still young and he's still a different generation. Sal, because you mentioned about his killings, because I was always confused. How come he never been arrested for the associations with Rocco Marinucci, Frank Chicky Narducci and others in that realm? How come he's never been arrested when he was probably the most easy suspect to determine after his father's assassination?
I think, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Salvie Testa was certainly a target of an investigation when Narducci was killed and when all that stuff was going on. But if you have to also remember, this predated any cooperators in the Philadelphia crime family. And I think if Testa had not been killed, he probably would end up being indicted. Because when guys flipped, they would have certainly given up Testa as well. But Testa's murder, ironically, I mean, I think Testa's murder is one of the things that convinced a guy like Nick Caramandi that you screw up with Scarfo, there's no alternative. You've got to go cooperate or you're going to get killed. I mean, that
Right. Didn't
was
he?
the message that the murder of Salvie Testa sent that message out. And I think Tommy Del Giorno and Nick Caramandi, the two major cooperators in the Scarfo era, got that message loud and clear. And when they ran afoul of Scarfo and they knew what had happened to Salvie, Salvie was Phil Testa's son. Phil Testa basically made Scarfo. Scarfo had been banished to Atlantic City. When Testa took over, he made Scarfo the consigliere of the family. So Scarfo was obligated to Phil Testa. Yet Scarfo killed Salvie Testa.
His own godson.
Paranoia. Salvie was this charismatic, young, good-looking gangster. Probably everything Scarfo wished he could have been, but wasn't. And Scarfo began to see Salvie Testa as a rival, where in fact I don't think he was. I think Salvie Testa was perfectly content to be the capo in Philadelphia and to work for Scarfo. Scarfo couldn't cope with it.
Yeah, speaking of that, because I've also his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, wrote a book about their relationship. Have you ever read about it?
Now I've talked to, if it's the same woman we're talking about, I've talked to a couple of women who had relationships with Salvie, and nothing but praise for the guy as a very, very intelligent, charismatic, good-looking guy, handsome guy. On the other hand, I mean, Nick Caramandi would say Salvie Testa grew up in that life, knew the way of Cosa Nostra inside and out, and knew what it was all about, and knew that violence was a part of it. And that's one of the reasons Testa was able to survive for almost a year while they were plotting to kill him, because he knew the ins and outs. But ultimately, it caught up to him. Yeah.
Did Nick Caramandi witness him being killed?
No, Nick Caramandi disposed of his body. Nick Caramandi knew how it went down in the candy store, and Nick Caramandi's job was to take the body and dump it in Jersey, which what he and a couple other guys did. I mean, he knew what was going down. He knew all the different times they tried to set Salvie up. And I'm like I said, I think one of the big reasons Caramandi flipped was when he got jammed up and he thought he had pissed Scarfo off. He knew what had happened to Salvie Testa, and he's saying to himself, if he can do that to Salvie, he's going to do it to anybody, and I'm the next target. And so they flipped.
Now, I hear different speculations about this before Salvie Testa was killed and before his downfall, is that when he owned like businesses in Atlantic City, and then one of those businesses was sold to Donald Trump. Is that true, or I hear like different
I had a piece of real estate with Salvie and one of the Narducci boys. They had a.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and check out more content. Feel free to give us your feedback and suggestions on who we should do next in the comments. This is Infinitely Productions. We love ya.